final stop along the cultural front line is Nigeria's capital city, Abuja, a place that has its own thriving literary scene, but it's spoken word poetry that's fast establishing itself as a national
hotel in Abuja. Tickets for the show sold for about the same price as a blockbuster movie at the cinema just across the street. Walking through the aisle to find my seat at the front, I peered into the audience. Some 600 people have bought tickets for the show that night. There were couples looking for a good night out, women with toddlers nestled on their laps, office workers hoping to get the weekend relaxation going with some scintillating poetry, lovers or spouses who had come to support their poetic partners, parents that had come to see their loved ones perform. The anticipation was luminous, and the energy spread out from the stage, where spoken word impresario D.K. Chukwumerije was rendering another poem.
Flames falling from the air, bombs exploding here and there, guns spitting, knives slitting, ghostly towns with dead men walking.
He bounced around like a man on springs. His athletic body was possessed by the spirit of performance, and his soft, deep voice was inflamed with passion. He delivered verses about love, about growing up, about disenchantment. In a country where most poets end up giving away their self-published collections because no one would buy them, the idea of selling tickets for a poetry event seems laughable at first. And when the tickets cost 4 times the average price of a poetry collection, this skepticism only increases until one attends the show. Spoken word poetry has become more popular in Nigeria since the mid-2000s. Pioneers like Simi C.H. Hassan, having been influenced by the works of Jamaican poet Mutebaruka, started the trend.
In cans in a ball of string, but we don't recommend that. KOA News Radio, 850 AM and now on 94.1 FM.
Hi, Jim Gravina from Gravina's Window Center in Littleton, here with my family.
We're a family-owned and operated business for over 43 years, and a proud distributor of Infinity from Marvin Fiberglass Windows.
It's been our pleasure to work with your family over the years.
We would like to thank you for your business, and from our Gravina family in Littleton to yours. And remember, business is yours for your windows and doors.
KOA, Denver, KBCO HD3 Boulder.
From the renterswarehouse.com studios.
This is KOA News Radio, 850 AM and now on 94.1 FM.
An iHeartRadio station.
KOA News Radio time is...
All right, Ron, are you ready, my friends?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Bill O'Brien, Houston Texans head coach, says Josh McDaniels deserves another head coaching job. You know Josh. Should he be coaching as the head coach next year?
No question about it. I mean, when you look at some of these guys as head coaches, I sit back and I laugh the mistakes that they make each and every week. Josh, one thing about Josh, there's a lot of struggling quarterbacks in this league, and he can go in and he can help many of these young quarterbacks instantly. Right now, he can go in and help Ryan Tannehill become a quality quarterback and reach his full potential. He's a very knowledgeable guy. He understands the locker room because he's young enough, but yet he's a guy that when you walk in a room, he deserves respect. He commands respect.
According to reports, the Redskins are signing veteran running back Pierre Thomas. Do you expect him to make any sort of an impact?
Yeah, I think he provides him with depth. Obviously, he's been sitting at home, so he's going to come. He's going to be really motivated, and he understands that they're in a situation where they can still make the playoffs. So, yes, he's going to be very amped up and anxious to prove that he still has something left in the tank. I like this signing.
We find out Wednesday, Rodney, J.J. Watt broke his hand in practice. He's still going to play against the Patriots. How much of an effect will a broken hand have on J.J. Watt?
Well, we know he's going to have to get out of that conservative mode. He's going to have to take shots down the field, involve Jason Witten, throw to Terrence Williams, who's become a second reliable receiver, and get Dez Bryant the ball early so he can get confidence and he can get going because he is a difference maker. Yes, I think him talking trash and him with his outbursts on the sideline, that kind of takes away from the quality of player he is. But let's not forget, he's still a fantastic football player.
Here's an interesting one. Bills are at the Eagles. LaShawn McCoy spoke this
for your game and your concentration on what we need to do as a team. Make this bigger than you. See, if I'm a guy in that locker room, I'll pull him to the side. And if he wants to listen, fine. If not, I'll offer my advice and I'll keep it moving. But I think the Eagles will sell out to stop this guy. I think somebody else is going to have to step up in the passing game. Tyrod Taylor, he's been very, very aggressive with Sammy Watkins. And although last week, 3 catches, 100-plus yards, but those are the type of plays that they're making. And Tyrod Taylor, he doesn't have any limitations on him. It's not like they say, hey, we want you to manage the game and throw a little 8-yard outs. No. If he gets an opportunity to throw the ball 60 yards down the field, guess what, Dan? He's going to take it. He's taking it. Exactly.
There's no question about it. It's going to be an interesting matchup there. There's that bad blood for sure. Bills and Eagles, plus there's playoff implications. Bills are 1 game out of a wild card spot in the AFC. The Eagles, of course, tied the top of that AFC East as crazy as that is. It is the Safety Blitz. Rodney Harrison, DH Sports for NBC Sports Radio, built by the Home Depot, like school style. Home Depot has everything you need to decorate your home for the holidays for less. Tis the season for holiday trimmings. Deck your home from the Home Depot's wide variety of ornaments, wreaths, garlands, and fresh garden artificial trees. Plus, get free shipping on online holiday decor orders over $45. Visit HomeDepot.com/holiday for more details. The Home Depot, more saving, more doing. I said it earlier, Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the scarier teams in the AFC. A big matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. Your safety, Will Allen, joins us next year on the Safety Blitz alongside Football Night America's Rodney Harrison. I'm Dan Portman. Obama. She's very often said, "You're too negative. Lighten up." So it's not like she's this Obama hater or even very political, and she's not really into guns. But suddenly, because of this terrorist attack in San Bernardino, California, her mindset is completely changed. And I think it's really interesting. And Barack Obama really doesn't like guns.
gifts a couple of times. It's a wonderful way to give because it's a win-win for everybody. I was able to give the stock to Colorado Public Radio. They had the benefit of its current value. I had no requirement to pay a capital gains tax, and so it allowed me to give more, and it was pretty simple. Go to CPR.org and learn how to do it.
Please let us know if you have transferred stock to CPR.
This is Colorado Public Radio. I'm Bob Lafley. Snow for the mountains of Colorado. An additional 4 to 8 inches possible for the Front Range Mountains and foothills through late this afternoon. Lighter amounts in the 2 to 4 inch range for the Denver metro area and the Northeast Plains. Highs today for Denver and Boulder in the low 30s. Overnight lows in the teens. Tomorrow, clouds will clear out and temperatures move back near normal. Highs in the mid-40s. And Junction will see highs in the 30s today and tomorrow.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from Farmers Insurance, informing people about common insurance gaps so they won't be surprised by what their policy actually covers. Agent locator and more info at farmers.com/gaps. Farmers Insurance, know the gaps. And from Inada, Japanese maker of full-body massage chairs, including the Flex 3S with pre-programmed shiatsu massages and full-body stretch sessions at inadausa.com. That's INADAUSA.com.
This is Weekend Edition from NPR News. I'm Scott Simon. Negotiators at the UN climate talks in Paris have delivered a draft text of a new pact to curb global warming. Now it's up to delegates from nearly 200 countries to vote it up or vote it down. Joined now from Paris by NPR's Christopher Joyce. Christopher, thanks so much for being with us.
Hi, Scott.
The chief French negotiator addressed delegates today. What did he say?
He said the world is holding its breath. He quoted Nelson Mandela. He said that none of us acting alone can be successful. It was a pep talk, really. He said everyone comes here with red lines that they don't want to cross, and he urged them, okay, forget that, and let's agree on a new deal.
What's the strategy been in behalf of various interests as they approach the end of this?
It's followed a pretty basic narrative that the wealthy Western nations got rich using fossil fuels with abandon, and now they want the rest of the world to develop without them. And the developing world is saying, look, we can't afford to do that unless you help us to pay to go green. And all of this opens up some historical wounds, actually. I mean, many developing countries were colonized by Western imperial powers, and some of their delegates here have been, well, they say they don't want to be bullied by Western governments.
What has the West offered to try and keep those countries in the tent, so to speak?
Mostly money. India and China and the African countries in particular have argued strongly that financially the West has not been forthcoming. So there's language now to assure them that these funds will flow and that more will come later. What the Western bloc of donor nations got returned was the right to monitor how that money would get spent. And this was a tough win, actually, because China and India, in particular, are wary of being second-guessed by outside governments.
So in the end, all this money and effort, this creates a lag time to reload. But Freilich and other gun control advocates want California lawmakers to close this loophole when they reconvene next year.
They are military-style weapons for a reason. They are designed for and intended to allow the shooter to kill as many human beings as possible in as short as time as possible.
Well, Governor Jerry Brown vetoed a similar effort 2 years ago, even as other so-called blue states like Connecticut and Maryland had moved to ban AR-15s after the Newtown massacre. The gun debate is so complex and cuts across party lines in red or blue states. Just take Mike Freeland. He lives in Tulsa. He owns several AR-15s and loves building them.
For a good part of the country, shooting is just part of the culture.
Freeland says he doesn't identify politically with what he calls the stereotypical gun owner. He leans left, but he also doesn't think banning AR-15s or other guns is the way to go.
Yeah, I think the AR-15 for incidents like we hear way too often, I think it's just the availability of it.
He wants to see tighter restrictions on buying guns in the first place. You talk to people on both sides of this debate, and if nothing else, it seems like there's this general agreement on one thing. There's a huge appetite for a broader conversation on gun violence that cuts past the rhetoric. Kirk Siegler, NPR News, Los Angeles.
And now it's time for sports. How hot are the Golden State Warriors?
Steph Curry and the Warriors are hotter than Adele, hotter than Vodka, the Gobi Desert in July, hotter than Trinidad scorpion peppers. Golden State beat the Boston Celtics in double overtime last night. They're now 24-0. I mean, 0 zippo nada losses on the season. NPR's Tom Goldman joins us. How are you, Tom?
Scorpion peppers? What the heck?
I had to look that up. In any event, well, that's only fair these days. This one was tense. The Warriors were down with just a couple minutes left.
Playing a very good